Okay, hello again. Now today I've just got a little packet that's turned up in the post. I'm pretty sure I know what's in here, so hopefully I'll be right. Okay, so it's a little slip from the supplier, and in here I can get it open. There are a couple of cartridges for a record player. Now these I think are very similar to the sort used on the cheap Crosley ones, but they've got flip stylus on them, so they've actually got a quite decent looking stylus, but they also flip over just like many traditional cartridges did. So I think you read it from the top, so from the top that would be LP, flip it over, and that would be the 78 setting. So I'm hoping these will just be like a drop-in replacement for the ones that I'm using, or the one that I'm using on my radiogram, and I can think of lots of other uses where it would be really convenient to have a cartridge which is both a 78 cartridge and also an LP one or a 45 one. So these weren't much more expensive than just the ordinary cartridges, and in fact if you take into account the fact that I didn't have to buy the Stylus for a 78, they actually work out really quite good value. So I've got a couple of those which I will give a go on a record player and see how we get on. I found an interesting video on these cartridges, and one interesting point was that the 78 Stylus is apparently not really the right size for 78s. So 78 Styluses are bigger than the ones for vinyl, also known as microgroove. And apparently on a lot of these cheap cartridges the Stylus is not really the optimal size for 78s. The good news is that the whole Stylus bar comes out and is replaceable by a standard one that does actually have the right ones on, although it costs about as much as the whole cartridge over again. So if that's the case, then these aren't quite as good value as I thought they were. However, I still think they're better than the sort of standard cheap Crosley type ones you get. I mean, at least these ones have proper metal stylus bars instead of the cheap plastic ones, and whereas on this sort here you can actually buy 78 stylus clip-in or clip-in stylus like this one here. I'm led to believe that these really aren't any better than the stylus is fitted, or the 78 stylus is fitted on these ones, and that they suffer from the same size problem. There are other differences in styluses between microgroove and a 78. The actual material they're made out of can also vary, and I don't pretend to be an expert on this at all, but what is interesting, and it probably won't show up on camera, but it's quite clear looking at the styluses on this cartridge that they are different. They are made of a different colour material. Okay, I thought to finish off I'd just do a little audio test. So I've put one of these cartridges into this little iron record player that doesn't get used much actually as a record player, but it's a handy 3-speed turntable. I've just got one of the channels connected up to a little LM386 amplifier. So I try it on 78 first. So the stylus is flipped to the 78 position. Right, that sounds okay. So we'll try a 45 next. Change the speed. And flip the cartridge over as well. Okay, so it's now an LP. Well, that works too. Now, considering the fact that both records are pretty beat up, they're the sort of records I use for my acoustic gramophone experiments, and it's a pretty rubbish record player anyway, and the amplifier's not great either. I think it sounds reasonably okay, so at least it demonstrates that the cartridge is actually working properly, and that the flip stylus does at least flip and operate on both sides. Another thing to note is the weight of the standard Crosley style cartridge is only 1.93 grams or 1.92 grams, whereas these flip over cartridges are a little bit heavier, so they're just over 1/4 gram heavier. Now, if you've got a record player with an adjustable tone arm, that won't be a problem at all, but for something like a cheap Crosley style record player, or like that iron that I just showed, it does mean an extra 1/4 gram or so pressure on the record. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to Mr. RG Stuff.